adjacents. Anybody else watching this? Today is part 340, and I am your host, Copper Bear. We'll wait for some people to pop in the chat. Wax a Bear, good to see you. Miles Medicus, good welcome, Ukrainian. Today we have Hometown Bear, and we're now on Unbearables Media, so you guys are welcome to log on to unbearablesmedia.com and watch our, Kappa in the house. Oh my gosh, I'm missing names. Blind Auto Company, welcome. Jan Setch, welcome. If I said that right, I'm sorry if I didn't. Wobbly, good to see you. Hometown, Robert. So yeah, you guys are welcome to watch. I don't know how much is uploaded on there, but you're welcome to watch these streams on Bearables Media. Our YouTube is a little bit compromised, but we're working on alternatives. So definitely hit up Unbearables Media. And if you watch or listen to the Telegram group, definitely join that as well. Yeah, it's really awesome, Wobbly. It's really cool. Paraplegic, welcome. Well, let's get our guest on. Let me invite. Let's see. Hobbit Bear, good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
What's happening?
Oh, going pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I visited a bear last night. So that was really fun.
Right on. Yeah, I guess not much too new for me right now. Just kind of working away, just at my own little cartoon ideas, and yeah, just kind of hanging tight and trying to ignore all the honking noise and everything that's going on outside.
We're talking about that. I'm just kidding. We don't have to if you want to.
Yeah. So that's pretty much just what's going on with me right now. I'm actually even trying to come up with a cartoon idea about the whole trucking thing, though. Even though trying not to get emotionally engaged with it either.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things, I'm just kind of like, all right, at first it sounded kind of cool that everyone was doing this, but then you start looking into it a little bit more and you're like, you know what, this is really starting to sound pretty retarded, actually. It's like, for me, it's just kind of work on a cartoon, it kind of gets the funny ideas going, and then you're just kind of less emotionally attached to the whole thing.
Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty intense. I'm just gonna welcome more people in here. Mumsy, Hi King, Titty, Papa J, Zezzy, good to see you guys. Jando, Blended, welcome. You guys are welcome to put questions in the chat as we go. And but yeah, definitely. So if people hadn't seen your previous streams, you've been on a couple times, once with Papa J, once with Finks, and so now we're just gonna kind of continue the conversation. So if you guys want to watch those, definitely can check those out on YouTube. But yeah, so you are in Canada. I don't know how many. It seems like there's another animator. Is it Red Pill? Is he in Canada as well?
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon?
Who isn't there another animator in Canada?
Yeah, I believe it's Hand Bear, actually. But
yeah.
Other side of the country. So yeah, I guess I represent animator bears on the West Coast.
Well, good, because I'm West Coast. Yeah, so we'll just get started. So you're looking at doing a couple more animations. That's one of the announcements that you kind of wanted to make. Maybe talk about what you're thinking about. Yeah, I think Red Pill Rooster is as well, like on the West Coast.
That's right. My apologies, Red Pill Rooster, just because I hadn't seen or talked to him in a while. Last time I actually saw him was during the summer. We did like a mini BC Bear meetup.
Awesome.
It was him. They were just kind of exploring the province. They were just kind of looking for some places that could just kind of help them, what's something better than Vancouver? So that was kind of nice to get to meet up with him for the first time. Yeah. So he really liked Vernon, so hopefully we get to do some more of that down the road.
Yeah, definitely. The BC Bears, like, they get together and they come out in numbers. I have a few friends that are on the island, and then some that are in like the mainland that I talk to pretty regularly. And so it's pretty awesome to be able to communicate with them. And, we're still kind of in the same region because, Oregon, Washington, Idaho are kind of all in that BC area. So
Yeah, and I guess yeah, BC, everyone's kind of got some good ideas of like, what we can do with them as far as like the bear meetups and everything. There's been a lot of talk in the Telegram chats, but I usually tend to just kind of pop into and just sort of read what everyone's thinking. And still the idea is to kind of get something happening around the Kootenays, just on the other side of the border of where Bertari is and where Ursaria. Yeah, so I mean, everyone's kind of got their own plan going, and I think it's not going to stop there. It's going to start in like areas like Creston, and they're going to go a few more hours north, and then kind of where I am in the Okanagan area, see if we can make some more networks happening over there. And yeah, so I mean, it's definitely spreading across the province, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, we've got some pretty big Washington meetups going in the next couple months, so it's pretty cool to see. I'm a few hours away from Washington, like a couple hours from the border, and then where everyone is in Battleground and near Centralia and all that kind of stuff. But if I remember, there was quite a bit of bears in Seattle as well. And so the funny thing is, like, I've visited so many bears, and most of them are like on the East Coast that I've visited, or in the middle of the country. So all right, everyone's just saying cool. All right.
Ontario, like that's actually where I was born, was in Ontario. So I still have actually a lot of family connection back in Ontario, just like a couple hours outside Toronto. But so yeah, usually when I find out what's going on over there, it's usually from my dad. So he kind of gives me a more of an interesting perspective. He works with Amish people every day, so he's kind of detached from sort of the Babylonian world, but he's definitely he's close enough where he can kind of tell me what's different with Ontario and BC. So it's always been helpful.
Bear Pelagic asks, will you be working in the work camps?
Oh, we'll see what happens. I don't think so, but
there's no Bear Pelagic coffee in here, by the way. Bear Pelagic. I'm giving him a hard time now. All right, cool. Yeah, I know that there's a big meetup coming up in May in the Creston area. Is that correct? Like where Runner Bear is, in that area over by Ursario. That is beautiful country. I've been out to Ursario a couple times, and there's this part of the drive where it's kind of an like a viewpoint, and you're looking down on the valley, and you see the Moyi River and just these huge mountains, the Moyi River, and it's just like all green. Well, when I went, it was like summertime, so it was all green. It was just so gorgeous, so picturesque, and you have these little homes like, spaced out or whatever. And I'm like, man, whoever owns that, like, they're living in heaven. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, I guess the whole area, I think, I guess the Kootenay Times, where we've had the whole Mike Wheeland episode and everything, it's pretty much the exact same as BC here. Just a little bit across the border and everything. Yeah. And I checked on Google Maps, so I was just kind of curious, like, how far of a drive it'd be. It's only like a 6-hour drive from where I live, so imagine that when things kind of loosen up, there'll be a lot more opportunity to kind of check out the area as bears and everything get more populated in the area. And yeah.
Yeah. Pat Life asks, will a Canada cartoon be in the series?
So are you thinking
about doing one, or?
Yeah, I've been kind of drawing up some dual ideas and everything. Just kind of BB just kind of ripping into some of the guys honking up the street and everything like that, and trying to find a creative way where he doesn't. Man, there's just so much material I was pulling out of the streams today, just like taking little random audio clips. And there's one where he rips into Pagan Bear's sister. I thought, okay, there's some really good jokes here.
Gosh, that was pretty funny. I was like, who is this person? I've never heard of him.
Like, Toronto Jew Bear gets it. I even got my own little Canadian Jew with me, guys. I know what's going on around there. And then he's just like, hello, kind of pops by the crowd. So yeah, I was messing around with some audio bits there. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's as much as it's hard for some people, I think, to listen to, because they're so emotionally invested in the message of what the quote unquote Canadian truckers are doing. On this, on the same instance, you have to still have your eyes to see and see through what's going on. And, you know, I think I even in the chat, and I think I said to you, it was really when Owen played that first, because when it first happened, Owen played that Amazing Grace song over all these trucker images, you know, these video images. And I was like, it's the song that gets me. And it's like, this is BB 101. I don't know how long you've been listening to Owen, but in early 2017, 2018, there was what got me really hooked was he was, you know how he does with like the super sneaky music? He'll just put it over when he's like, okay, we're gonna deep dive some gravy. Well, he was doing it with these other songs, and he's just like, you know, playing all these melodies or just playing a song over what he was saying, and like the juxtaposition of what he was saying to the music. It's just an interesting psychological examination of how powerful music really is to you know, convey a message. And so when we're watching The Amazing Grace, because that song, like top 3, that song will always like get me emotional, just because it is a powerful song. Like the chords and the lyrics, it's a very powerful thing. It like speaks to you spiritually.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of where I can kind of fall trap to sometimes. It's see, with music, with me, like I'm terrible at separating lyrics from the actual sounds that I'm hearing. So I find if the sound, like it's very orchestrated, it's beautiful, it kind of has like this kind of build up, that will affect me probably more than hearing the words, because the words I actually have to try and separate the two. And yeah, either I'm listening to what the person's saying or I'm trying to listen to the sounds. And I think the sounds kind of go to like imagery is something that's, you know, kind of touches close to the home. Then that's kind of how the spell will definitely start working. And with a song like Amazing Grace, you know, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, and like how many people have heard that song? And you know, even Bears have used it when they were doing some like Owen clips of, you know, the Lord of the Rings with the Amazing Grace bagpipes. And it just reminds me, you know, it's like that was one of the earliest spells that he was really kind of fun, in a fun way, driving home, like, you know, Canon and D, like, you want this, Lexus, you want this ring for your, you know, if you don't get it, you don't love her. And or like if he doesn't get this for you, he doesn't love you or whatever, for like a message to the woman to really that kind of target her. And it's like when you get sucked in emotionally to these things, it's really like a stopping point. Like, okay, we have to look at this from a macro perspective. What's going on here with the music? What's the message? And, you know, is there gravel in here? Titty Bear asks if you're going to zip line across the U.S. border in a Speedo.
Yeah, I saw that one earlier. No.
That was funny. I had to ask. Oh yeah, Toronto Drew Bear mentioned the Amazing Polly songs. I was listening to those last night on my drive up to Washington, and that was really, really funny. That's
man,
definitely
remember the jokes and the fly and everything. And see, that's actually, one of those things. He's just kind of doing what he's doing well with the piano and everything. You're kind of getting to the mood of the music, then suddenly he just starts busting out jokes like left, right, and center. And yeah, it's just hilarious. I don't even know how I could even try and incorporate that into the cartoon, because that'd even be funny if it just kind of, after Owen finishes rant, just kind of cuts him doing Polly during the credits or something.
I had no idea that this woman was so popular. Like, you know, I was like, who is listening to this woman? Like, I was trying to listen to her when Owen was playing her, and I was like, there's certain women where their voice is just it's just grinding like nails on a chalkboard. And I'm like, I might be a little bit too high tea, but I couldn't listen to that woman. Like, you know, I have a hard time listening to some other people I think are really based. I'm like, you know, I like them, I have nothing against them, but just the tone of their voice, like, it just immediately puts me to sleep, or I'm just like tuned out and I'm already thinking about something else. I need somebody yelling at me in a screen all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Is there any other questions here?
Yeah.
That's, that's a big thing. I haven't actually seen anything else of Polly other than just the songs from BB. So it's interesting that some of these people that are actually pretty popular, I just haven't had the time to check out all of them. Pretty much the only people I listen to right now is just that BB, Crow 777, and just probably a bit of Vox from time to time.
Yeah. Like Vox, it's his tone is just so chill. Like it really like some people complain about how loud and like abrasive Owen is, and it's like I like that though. It keeps me connected, and I listen to it at work on the loud. I have it on speaker, so everyone gets to hear the live stream when they come into my office. And I have a coworker that works in there with me, and gosh, who was he going at? He was going at the Canadians, and he was saying like, if I was dictator, this is what would happen. And at the end of it, my coworker just looks over at me and he's like, that guy's kind of nuts. He just said he was gonna like put everybody in work camps. And I was like, he's kind of joking, like, the way that he says it, it's with such authority, but at the same time, like, he's a comedian, so you have to separate the two. Like, he's saying if, and then here's the story. And it's just funny seeing, because I wouldn't say he's like a normie or whatever. He really does think outside the box, but he's just not a bear. He's just not in that category. He still listens to Shapiro. He still listens to Joe Rogan, and that's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, he can listen to whatever he does, but he's definitely gonna hear Owen screaming in while we're working.
That's exactly it. I mean, I think with me, like, I would try and hang out. I have a few normie friends, and they're pretty cool and all and everything. Like, as far as like the whole jab and everything, it never comes up. So, I mean, they've done it, but as far as when I hang out with them, it's like it never even existed. So that's kind of actually where I can appreciate hanging out with them time to time, just because I know it's not going to be anything that evolves into like the two binaries and everything. So like whether you're jabbed or unjabbed, doesn't matter. They just want to be friends, right? But yeah, he would bring up Joe Rogan every now and then, and every time that happens, I have to kind of hold it back. I'm like, he dumpster pumps, right?
There was a moment at work. Okay. This is just the reality. Like, at work, I'm like, I don't even care if you guys like fire me for my thoughts and views, because you're gonna hear them. But so there was one time they were talking about how they were talking about Joe Rogan, my boss, and his son. They're sitting there talking about Joe Rogan, and they like look over at me like, aren't we edgy? And I'm like, oh, that's cool. You I can't even. That's really cool that you're listening to Joe Rogan. And they're like, you don't like Joe? And I'm like, get on my phone. I'm like, well, let me show you a picture. And it was a picture of, I'm so sorry, this is so funny. It was a picture of him bent over the Corvette, the red car. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah. And then
yeah, this Rogan.
I was like, that's Joe Rogan. They're like, no, that's photoshopped. And I was like, no, that's him. And then the other one was when he was doing the splits in his Instagram, where he's doing the splits and he's kind of bent over. The one where Nighthawk was like, had like all these guys behind him, like Joe Biden sniffing him and all this other stuff. And so I pull that up and I'm like, you still like Joe Rogan? And they're like, we're never looking at your phone again. So I was like, I mean, whatever.
Went over a Hot Wheels car. Barley Mop says, yeah.
Dude, it was, oh my gosh, it was so funny. Yeah, Nighthawk did such a good job on that meme. It was so funny. I can't tell you how hilarious it is. Based hanging with normies, just got to keep it funny. Yeah.
Exactly.
Had Owen on my car for 2 seconds with my 2.5-year-old. Entered stream with him screaming. And they're clipped D's. We stopped the stream after that. He's not going to be traumatized. He won't remember, hopefully. We hope.
Something pretty funny here. He's asking if I should do a cartoon with Rogan visiting the trucker rave, trolling for action. I thought, that'd be really funny if I could try and incorporate him in there somehow.
A dumpster truck?
Appearance there. So, it's like any excuse to get like an Ira type character just kind of hand rubbing in the background. Like there'll be BB just kind of ripping the truckers and they're wondering like, what's going on? Why is he getting mad at us? And then there's just, of course, the Grabbler who just knows everything that's kind of going on. Not saying you're a Grabbler or Toronto Jew Bear though, but but just kind of like pretending in this case of the cartoon. He's like, don't worry, I got my own Jew. And
yeah, Owen with Toronto Jew Bear in the back. That'd be great. Rogan as a Mountie. Oh boy. Sleep deprived? You've gone too far. Just kidding. That's hilarious. Have him asking everyone if there's a dumpster nearby.
The Grappler whisper. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Toronto Jew Bear is definitely
line up over here. He just kind of points to this big lineup, and there's this huge thing going up to a big dumpster, and there's Joe Rogan just standing at the top, just kind of like, all right.
There's some gold in there. Obviously, like having something to kind of keep the spell break is definitely cool. Because what I think is so cool about the animators that are kind of capturing the events that we kind of go through is that we can kind of go back and see, it's a great way to remember the things that we've kind of gone through. And Mountain Bear did so many of them, and it was really funny when he was using the South Park animations, but like his animations have gone from like, you start thinking about the first Ira, I watched the first Ira, and now we've got a really like clean looking Ira. Well, sort of.
Recognize now.
It's just seeing the growth in where he's come from. And like your animations are really cool. Like how much are you influenced by like other animators? Like are there animators that you look up to like in the mainstream?
I mean, I definitely get compared to John Kay, the creator of Ren and Stimpy, a lot. Although, I mean, yeah, definitely one inspiration I've had from a while ago. I mean, now there's all kinds of news about him where he's just a big, he's quite the creep. So, yeah. I mean.
Well, if you watched Ren and Stimpy, did you ever watch that?
Yeah, it's actually been quite a while. But I've also like the old Tex Avery style cartoons, anything from like the 30s and the early 40s. I guess Looney Tunes, there's been several different directors that carried on different styles. So there's Bob Clampett, there's Fritz Freleng, and then there's also Chuck Jones. And Chuck Jones is kind of the guy who made it a little bit more mainstream. So he came up with Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. And so his style of humor was more breaking the fourth wall, where you look at the camera, they'll kind of pull up a sign and actually explain the joke to you. And Clampett, he would do these things where, because he was such a skilled animator, he could take the character and he could break it out of its normal proportions and have it stretch all the way across the screen just in a few frames. So you're just getting this really wild, zany kind of motion happening. And the comedy would come out of the timing, just of how he would animate Daffy Duck, like kind of like flailing his arms around and kind of going crazy. But he's just the way he'd animate the character zipping across the screen was just so unique that, yeah, it created a whole different energy to the comedy. And yeah, so there's a lot of different things you can kind of take out of the different directors' styles. And that's what definitely inspired me to make cartoons. You can really, really be funny with these things. You can capture all kinds of satire and you don't even have to explain it. It's just making a character that kind of represents what's going on. Just their wild energy that they kind of portray. So, I mean, you got Daffy, right? He's greedy, so they have to really like play up the hand rubbing and stuff like that and like make it very Shakespearean and really over the top.
Yeah. I was just recanting with my son because we were talking about the War of 1812, and there's the 1812 overture. And, a lot of these older, and I'm sure you're using a lot of them because they're, public domain music, all the classical sounds. And we were talking about that, and then I was like, you know, a lot of this music I remember from watching Bugs Bunny cartoons, like Looney Tunes. You know, the Barber of Seville is probably one of my favorite Bugs Bunny cartoons because of not only was it, you know, really funny to watch the monster, you know, get won over by Bugs Bunny, but then you also have this classical music on the background, and you know, it kind of goes into what we were just talking about. And I was like, the Barber of Seville is just like, you know, you just remember it, and then when you see it, like, you almost can't unsee the cartoon. And
Exactly.
that's the cool thing about animation is it does that. But then there's, you know, also kind of a darker side, because, like, you know, John Kay, if you go and watch Ren and Stimpy, you're there's a lot of overtly sexual undertones or overtones in that show, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. Like, also, was I think this is like an interview I've read with a couple animators. I think this is even in the Toronto area. They were talking about like a drinking story where they were just like going around from different bar to bar and stuff like that. And then they ended up talking with this older guy who was just kind of one of these regulars. And turns out he was John Kay's dad. And I thought it was interesting in this interview that I was reading that he was bragging about how he got his son introduced to porn. He's like, oh, yeah, you know, it's like, I did that kind of thing. And you're like, now it makes sense after what kind of happened with John Kay. You're starting to realize it really comes down to like how the father really like kind of saw his son. He's like, well, I don't care. My son's in the drawing cartoons. He's kind of a bag or whatever he thinks. And he's like, I'm just going to get him into porn and shit. So like, I don't care about him. And then you can kind of see where like that generational curse will start passing on from different families.
Mm-hmm.
And as for my family, it was, you know, it was just about laughter. You know, like my dad would just come home from like logging and he needed something really funny to unwind to. So like, you know, his laughter was contagious. It would just like rip through the entire house. So like once we'd hear it, you know, we're all like huddling up and like wondering what's he laughing about. And that was kind of like the way our family would bond over comedy. Even like some of the adult comedy that we probably watched younger than we should have, like Blazing Saddles and stuff like that. I was already watching that when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And we thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even at 10, 11, you don't see all of what is in it. I mean, you're being exposed to it. I'm not giving it like any,
Exactly.
you know, whatever, but it's like you don't really notice all of that because, you know, I've watched so many things, and now when I go back and watch them with new eyes, it's like incredible. Like the other day, I posted Owen's original breakdown of Princess Bride compared to 9/11, and you know, he was mentioning right before that, he's like, I watched this movie with Walter with new eyes, like after going through all these new things, or at least new truth or spells, I guess. And he's like, and then it was 9/11, and he's like seeing all the ways that we're being deceived, and how it's just kind of play by play written out in this movie. And so you can kind of go back into some of these animations and see, a lot of the times with the new stuff, I can't even watch it because it's just gobbledygook. Like the words don't have any, like, there's no plot, and it just kind of goes nowhere. And so it just kind of goes to where there's not really a lot of creativity in the writing aspect of it, and at least in a cartoon or whatever, and sometimes even in movies, we don't have that.
Too, I'm like working on, was it Teen Titans Go? So I mean, when I first started working on, I'm like, okay, this is just kind of zany. It was good for a first job. You know, I wasn't like a super good animator or anything. I was just able to do like a good enough job where they're pretty pleased with it. But I remember that being my first job. I didn't think anything of like the writing or anything. Like it was just like, oh, that's a funny scene. They handed to me on my desk. I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a fun day to animate the cyborg character doing that. But then you realize just how people are just really not into this style of animation. Some people aren't even into the humor that much. It just relies too much on pop culture. And so that's kind of one of the things that, you know, it made me kind of wonder, you know, what direction do I want to take my own animation to? And I think after trying to come up with some of my own ideas, I think it was like when I started seeing BB doing the mix of the comedy on the piano and the music, it really, really hit. it really hit. I thought there's some really funny material can come out of this, and it's just constant script writing he's doing every day with the streams. So when I get see him doing kind of like a funny concept, I can kind of go back and start mixing up the audio. I'll slap to that music like the way you're mentioning, like the Barber of
Seville. Yeah.
So yeah. And yeah, I mean, sometimes when you see the classic music playing like BB's rants and things like that, I'm like, okay, this is really forming something really funny here. Like if I just add a pause right here, it sounds like this gag is going to happen. And then it goes back to BB talking. So I'm like, yeah, it just kind of opens up this whole different realm when I start mixing the two.
Yeah. And, you know, shout out to our animators, because, you know, it's not just this one script that goes from this to here. You know, like you said, you're having to take audio clips and kind of putting them together. Like if you listen to Red Pill Rooster's nice journey to Antarctica, it's like, you know, this is coming from like multiple different places in alleged time, in linear time.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking like earlier, like when we met up in the BC Bear meetup thing there. He was telling me how he's taking like streams from like months apart and just trying to merge them together just to make like one sentence. And kind of funny because BB is just so consistent that you can almost not even tell the difference. That like, oh wait, the first half of this sentence was like from 6 months before, and then you can kind of finish it up with something else. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, and the timing, like, you know, Mountain Bear is really good at that comedic timing and his like taking the stuff, because it's not just, like I said, it's not just like this one 10 minutes or this one 5 minutes. It's like, you know, probably a minute here, a minute and a half there, and you're having to like, you know, I've pieced together some stuff, and I'm not saying I'm like any tech person whatsoever. Like I'm such a noob at like all that kind of stuff. But like just putting things together, it takes a long time. Speaking of which, Potato Nigga Bear asks, how long does it take to put a cartoon sketch together?
I guess so right now, so I'm working on the one for the trucker thing, and trying to make it shorter, like about maybe 2 minutes long. Yeah, I guess it's sort of like the length of the actual classic song bit that I put in there. So pretty much the length of that song is I figure how long I should just make the entire cartoon. And I'm about like halfway through, maybe about a minute and 20 seconds in. And I've done it for about a couple days now. Like I started on late Thursday. It's just like starting to record a whole bunch of different streams and like convert into an audio clip. Then I'm just re-listening to them like, okay, that's a good joke. Throw that in. Like all that other stuff's good, but it doesn't flow with the other things that I've been putting in there. So I unfortunately cut them, or I'll kind of mix and match things. And sometimes, yeah, I don't even really know what I'm going into. I'm just kind of mixing things until it sounds good.
Yeah. And, you know, that's a talent in itself, I think.
Yeah, and so I mean that's the one thing I'd love to get something out, just because the one rant he did to Peg and Bear. I remember I was just listening to that in the background while I was making dinner and stuff, and I was laughing so hard that I thought, oh man, this has to be made into a cartoon. I don't even know if he's asking any of the animators to do this, but I feel like at least give it a shot and see if I can just come up with some ideas and we'll see if it works out.
Yeah. It was, you know, I don't even remember why he provoked him. It was funny. And then like, you know,
was the victim consciousness thing he was doing about his sister.
Oh, okay.
And just went like, you know, like it was the perfect time, you know, he's already kind of midway through the stream. He's definitely going and he's in that flow state. And then, yeah, and then he just kind of dropped the victim consciousness thing on him. And then, yeah, just BB had all the ammo he needed. It was the funniest thing. He just did something, went for like maybe a good 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, like sometimes he'll just get on, he'll just be in that flow state, and it's like, you know, I mean, if people are going to be running their mouth, like you're gonna get, it's almost like you're heckling at a certain point. And so, you know, it's like you kind of have it coming. I remember when I first started being in the chat, I was a little mouthy or whatever, poking the bear, and, you know, it was funny, but at the same time, like I respected it. I had been listening to it for years, and I had to really like think, do I want to get kicked out? Like, you know, this is kind of poking the bear, and, you know, at a certain point you're going to get banned if you keep it up. And it's like, maybe we don't ban enough right now, where people feel they just feel entitled to like send a chat or a super chat or whatever, and then just run their mouth in the chat. And it's like, I love being in the chat, when I can be, and I appreciate the stream. And so it's like, I want to support it. And so I had to like really pull myself back. Okay, if you're going to be emotional, like, and whatever, don't be in the chat. You can be emotional elsewhere. Like, go rant about the Jays, outside your parking lot at work.
Exactly. Yeah, there's some things you gotta kind of think things through. Yeah, just don't do it on the stream, or else you're just giving him the ammo just to kind of fire back. And I mean, at least it's good for the animators. Get some good comedic material.
Camera bear? I'm never mouthing. How dare you? How dare you, camera bear? Big Bear's D-Live chats taught me all I needed to know about online etiquette and manners. Yeah, and if you like being in the stream and participating, then just be respectful. Like, you're in somebody else's house. But the hell up more, yeah.
Exactly. So I guess there's that one cartoon idea, and then the other one I was thinking of, it happened over the Christmas holidays. I was watching I think it was like a British version of Christmas Carol. It was an old black and white one, and then it hit me. I'm like, Ira as Scrooge. We've got to do an Ira Christmas Carol where he's getting visited by 3 growler spirits and goes through his life. We can throw in like every single joke we came up for him in this thing, and I thought, there's an epic like Christmas cartoon that the Bears can have like every year. When everyone's kind of home for the holidays, we just kind of throw on a stream where it just kind of plays on loop. That would be a fun cartoon to kind of have just like on repeat.
Yeah, with a good message at the end. There's lots of characters to pull from. BB's really good about, setting those up, and then also you can just kind of create them. And, I think with one of the Red Pill Roosters that he was doing, like, if you need him to like say things so that you kind of get that together, I think he's open to do that. Like, he really wants us to, and this speaks out to the rest of the community and anybody that's listening to this. If you have animation skills, or like even like a little bit of it, like, just start creating. There's so much out there. So many streams, there's so many topics. It gets Black Santa is the shiznit teddy bear. You're funny. There's so many topics though that you can animate, that it's nothing but helping our community when you do that stuff. Even if you don't know much about how to do that stuff, I think you can kind of figure it out if you're tech savvy at all.
I mean, I think you just have to learn some basic things with software, and as long as you know how to draw really well, then I think that can be taught to you in a short amount of time. I think, was it Nato the Bear here was saying about getting some other Victorian animators and collabing on an epic short, and that's exactly what I'm thinking with this Christmas Carol one. I thought, because we got a lot of time to probably put into this one, trying to figure out some jokes, and I think that would be a good project to aim towards, just because I think it could be split up into 3 different parts. So you can bring a different kind of a bear to kind of be control some of the ideas, and just trying to think, okay, so here's like the very first funny part where, we kind of meet Tiny Tim and all those things like that.
You mean Tiny Joe?
Like Joe, right? Oh, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Joe Rogan's great to laugh at. Bless his heart. I think that would be really awesome. Like, I think the Bears really appreciate the new animation that comes out. Like, we like seeing, even music come out. Olive Tree did a great job. He's such a great composer, like, has this orchestral mind to his music. And the other animators, like, they just come up with these these characters and then just bring them to life in animation. I think it's so great. So
asked me about animating to one of Olive Tree Bear's music. I'm doing a collaboration with them, and I would love to do that. I think I maybe even mentioned that to him too. I think it was the sea shanty that he did. I pictured something very like similar to like how Disney would do like one of those sing-alongs. But again, these are always ideas that pop my mind, but to make them is another thing too. So I thought there's going to be like, well, I guess we've got all the time in the world just to keep building up bear targeting cartoons and just kind of have a big library. So it doesn't have to be out tomorrow, but just in a few years of time, there'll be a whole bunch of cartoons to select from. That'll be pretty awesome. Is there?
Oh, it sounds like Olive Tree has a new one coming out tomorrow, the 20th. I don't even know what today is. Oh, it is. It is tomorrow. Okay. I don't know. I don't even know where I'm at. I made it on time though. So aside from animation, what other things are you doing like in this new year that you're kind of really excited about? Because spring is just around the corner, and that's usually a time where I'm just like in action. So what kind of stuff are you kind of shooting for? Like more bear meetups or like what?
Yeah, definitely some bear meetups, and I think we've already got one set up for our May long weekend. So that's Victoria Day here in BC, and so yeah, we usually a lot of people hit up different kinds of camping sites. That's usually when the entire province goes out, to camping and stuff like that. So I think that's a good time for a good sized bear meetup. I think they had one planned for 3 days.
Oh, nice.
So, I don't know how many people are going to be showing up, but should be at least a couple dozen. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different bears to meet and get to know better. That's definitely do this year. And I think the other one is I got to get work on the gardening skills a little bit more. I made an attempt last year, but then the heat wave hit and I was just so green to everything I was doing that everything pretty much died right away. So then the smoke came and I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. So let's just say that this year I'm going to give another shot and hopefully do it right.
That's all you got to do, man. You just, part of gardening is failure. It's just the way that it is, but then also things want to live. So, well, that's awesome. I'm pretty passionate about gardening, and, I'm working with some bears to really, ramp up what we can do as far as, feeding people and getting at least some seeds out to people and just ramping that up. And I'm glad to see like Permy Bears really, stepped up to the plate and started that Grateful Harvest seed company. I thought that was really cool. He actually donated some seeds to, my little donation thing that I do as well. So yeah, live and learn. It definitely is. And, right now we still have a supply chain. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, around here, there's a lot of local farms, and the whole valley that I'm in right now, it thrives on all the local farming and farmers markets and things like that. So I haven't felt any real concern as far as, I guess you're not going to be able to like order things like from like Amazon or whatever, right? If the supply chains are break down, you still got all the farms around here, there's fresh water. I figured it's going to be fine. If things were to go through really hard times in this valley, at least I know that I'm in a pretty prosperous area as far as agriculture and stuff like that. So that's good.
Yeah, and you had some flooding and all that where it kind of slowed everything down and probably brought things into reality as far as supply chain. How was that?
It was interesting. I mean, I guess the same kind of thing with the beginning of the pandemic. People were concerned with like toilet paper for some reason. So that was always the first thing to go. And I saw the same thing too here. Like everyone just started clearing up the shelves because they thought it was going to be lasting for like at least a few months. But they had things pretty much opening up within 4 weeks. They're able to open up one corridor, just let through a single lane of traffic. So things were just like slow with replenishing, but they were getting replenished nonetheless. So, I mean, with thousands of people, like maybe even like close to like 250,000 people, they're getting supplied no problem. And so, I mean, it didn't get as scary as anyone thought it was going to be. But, I mean, yeah, the concern was there. Because when you're seeing the footage and everything online, you're just blown away by, like, these are pretty big highways, too, and they're up in pretty mountainous regions. And then you're just seeing them completely washed out. You're seeing homes underwater, and you're thinking, yeah, just like that, in like 2 days, everything changes.
I don't even know how to say that. Is it Coachella? I don't know how to say that. Was closed for a while, which sounds like, well, I used to joke with one of my Canadian coworkers that there's only 4 roads in Canada. Because when you look at the map, it's like, this one highway on the bottom that kind of runs along the border. we used to joke with them all the time about that. Like, but yeah, there really isn't a lot of like interstate highway travel, it seems. And some of the rumors that I've heard, because I'm like, oh, I would love to do like a road trip from BC all the way down to however far you can drive. I don't know how far you can drive, but to the east side, like just having a road trip. And they're like, yeah, you probably should use American roads. And I'm like, why? They're like potholes, and I don't know what the story is, but I always thought that would be funny.
Been a while for me, but when my family first lived in Ontario, like I think I was about 5 years old when we all moved down to BC. And the way we did it was you cross the border in southern Ontario and then you just kind of travel to the northern states, because to get through northern Ontario, it takes a whole extra day of driving. It takes a long time. Like, I don't know, like, yeah. And then after that, once you get to the prairies, everything's just super flat. If your vehicle's tuned properly, you can pretty much drive without even touching the steering wheel. It just keeps going straight.
Mm.
That's Saskatchewan for you. It's really fun. There's like one road that turns and that's about it.
It's just like a little 5-degree bend.
Yeah. And that's the whole prairies for you. I mean, that's like a whole day of driving, just going through Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And yeah, but I mean, you can do the same thing. I think I don't remember, but northern states are pretty much the same. You just got the freeways and you just keep going forever. And you just make your turn off when it comes to like Alberta or something like that. And yeah.
I can't imagine that the prairies are much different than the American prairies, except for it may be a little bit cooler as far as like, the weather patterns are concerned. But are there pretty like awesome places to homestead in Saskatchewan, and like I don't know
how it kind of looks in Saskatchewan, like just because it's just you see forever, right? Like, yeah, freight train bear, there's just like tunnel vision after a while. Yeah, you'll just see like a silo, and then right nearby the silo, you'll see like maybe like a village of like maybe 400 people, 500 people, just like maybe like a little 2 kilometers off the side. Like as you're driving by, you'll see like the very basics. You'll see a gas station, a mechanic's garage, things like that. You're like, okay, that's a small, thriving community. They got everything they need. And you see that all over Saskatchewan and in some places in Alberta. But I think with Alberta, you start seeing a lot more of the commercial farms, at least as far as I can remember.
Yeah, Alberta seemed to be like a tip of the spear, getting ahead of like getting rid of mask mandates and all that kind of stuff. Is that still true, or am I hearing rumors?
Alberta was the first to drop. Pretty much all the provinces are starting to drop it now, even Quebec, which seemed to be the one. I think they're enforcing the rules the harshest. BC, they're really wishy-washy about it. They just kind of wait till the last minute. They say they're playing by a case-by-case basis, all the rhetoric they use. So you're always left kind of hanging what they're going to decide in BC. But they're following the basic trends of all the other provinces. So if they're saying around mid-March, they're going to drop it, that's probably when BC is going to do it. They're just going to announce in the last minute. So it's really frustrating for people trying to figure out or trying to plan ahead anyway. And yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the left coast for you, I guess. It's very similar. Unless you're out in the country, it's the same, I think, in like Washington. I think Washington's a little bit more lax, believe it or not, even though they have Seattle, than Oregon. Like, I live in a fairly liberal town, and I'm not too far away from Portland, which is very liberal. And they just be hugging on that mask mandate. I'm like, all right, you guys have a good time.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess BC. I guess I've been planning on doing maybe a trip up to northern BC sometime this summer, because I have an aunt I haven't seen in quite some time, and I know she's got a farm. I like to visit and just kind of catch up with her. It's been quite a few years. Same with a couple old friends. So I used to live in northern BC, and then so I guess I should back up here. Our family left Ontario when I was 5. We moved to northern BC, which is Smithers, Bulky Valley region. It's probably like a 4-hour drive from the coast. And then, yeah, I lived there for about 12 years. And that's where my dad did mostly horse logging and stuff like that. And then things just kind of changed in life. And then we ended up coming down to the southern, the interior. And yeah, and so that was just a whole different change, just a whole different side of BC that I didn't even know existed.
And you're one of 6 kids, right?
I beg your pardon?
You're one of 6 kids, right? Children?
Yeah.
And are you like the youngest, oldest?
Pretty much right in the middle.
Right.
So I have 3 siblings above me, then 2 below me.
That's quite a big family. How is that? Like, was it pretty based?
I don't know actually. I mean, it's pretty good, I suppose. I mean, we still get along to this day, right? I mean, most of my siblings, they're not really for the mask or the jab thing at all, right? So I mean, we can definitely like talk about these sort of things, and pretty open about it. My mom, on the other hand, she's more for the mandates and everything, but instead of creating a wedge in the family, I just accept that she made her choices, and I just pray that nothing happens to her. And yeah.
We have a question. Were you homeschooled with your
little bit?
Pardon?
Very little bit. So what was it? I got like homeschooled for like half of grade 8. It was just kind of a thing. I was struggling with the regular public, or not the public school, the Christian school at the time. It's just a private school that the entire family is going to. Couldn't really jive with the classroom that well, and so we decided to do homeschool for the year. And unfortunately, halfway through it, things got a little tough financially for my parents. So my mom had to take a part-time job. It's her first part-time job ever, just at a clothing consignment store. And she unfortunately had to stop homeschooling me halfway through. But I can still say that just that 1.5 year with her alone, it was probably the first time I actually got like incredible grades and everything like that. And it wasn't just because, she's able to tell me the answer to anything. She just knew how to get across to me. Mm-hmm. She knew how to learn. She knew just kind of the right things to say. And yeah, it was just a very, very...
Moms do be having a knack for that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, we were unable to continue. And so I ended up getting put back a grade, went back to public school, and I was already behind by a grade. And things just didn't really last much longer for me. So, I mean, I didn't even get through high school. I got to grade 10 and then just couldn't hang on. But, just hanging in there and trying to learn what I can. And
yeah, I currently homeschool my son, and we do a very unschooling, like it's very lax. I'm just dragging him across the country, and we're having really in-depth conversations about stuff. And I do the classical conversation curriculum on top of everything else, and it's really cool. So the cool thing about, and this is something that I think mothers to be, anybody that's like kind of questioning on whether or not they want to homeschool or if they're capable of it, there's a lot of resources out there, and just find one that works for you. But the blessing of homeschooling is that you kind of get to go through all this stuff that you kind of learned or maybe even missed out on, and you get to relearn it all over again. So I'm learning stuff that I'm like, oh my gosh. And like, like having all these veils lifted on me and from like history, and then, learning about geography and where everything is, and looking at resources a little bit different from, like Africa or in Asia or Europe and stuff like that, and just kind of seeing things a lot differently. And so I definitely recommend, if you can't afford the whole classical conversations curriculum, at least try and get your hands on some of the timeline cards. Like those are really like pretty life-changing. And then, as far as like other homeschooling things, like using the things that they're interested in, like your mom did for you, is using things that she knew your learning style, and she knew how to like impart that into you, and you can get good grades. I happen to be like, I really loved going to public school when I was a kid, like young kid, in like first kindergarten through like fourth grade. And then fifth grade, we had to move, and I got this new teacher, and that woman was a witch. She sucked. And my mom didn't like her or anything like that. And it's just like, you kind of had to go through it. And then, after I finished that, I went into sixth grade, and it was, you go from primary school to middle school. And like, my teacher was amazing. He was a scientist, and he loved nature. And it was like, I loved all those things. And so it was a lot easier for me to kind of transition into that. But the way that your teachers treat you is like, you really want your parent to really be doing that. My mom did a lot of that stuff at home. So I still had this homeschool type thing at home, but then I was able to go to school and learn with the other kids or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we had like a whole set of like encyclopedias, and one of the things I actually enjoyed doing as a kid was just like busting out a random encyclopedia, and then you just pull up anything from all different kinds of animals or like different like pieces of the cultures and stuff. And I love that. I love just kind of going through every now and then. You'd find one as a kid, you're looking for ones with pictures, of course, when you're younger. But as you get older, you're starting to kind of understand more information, and so they were just such a treasure. Every time you open up one, you're always finding out something new.
Yeah. And I think, did you ever get to go out and see like how your dad horse logged? And
yeah, so did that a couple times. So I guess I had my two older brothers. He generally had my oldest brother Jared. He would take him around, and he would kind of be his right hand man. So he didn't really fare well with elementary school either, and he decided, I just want to work with you, Dad. So he did, and he just ended up like becoming a tree faller. And so, yeah, he was pretty rough around the edges guy when he was like barely 18. He already looked he was in his mid 20s. Just got insane strength. So Jared would he did a lot of concrete work. He did a lot of logging and stuff. And every now and then my dad would take us up there and just kind of show us a site where the horses were. He would kind of make like some quick corral just cut down a few trees and just make a quick corral just out of there. And yeah, it was pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. I grew up in a timber family. And so, the stepdad was a logger, and because of where he had to go for work, he knew where all the places to go on the weekend was.
Yeah.
So so he would be out there, falling trees and whatever else needed to be done. And, when you're out there doing that, you get to see where all the mushrooms are. You get to see where all the, the berry bushes are. And so you can kind of go out there. And so we spent every weekend going out, collecting, like foraging, all this stuff. And, when I was young, I didn't really mind it. Like, I loved doing it. And then as I got older, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like when you're a 13, 14-year-old girl, it's just like, I think there was a lot of social pressure of just, kind of fitting into a friend group or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to hang out. I don't want to hang out and do this anymore. But as I got older, it's like, now all those skills that I learned doing that are like so highly valued, and it's almost like it's been recycled, where that kind of lifestyle is appreciated.
I see my brothers chime in here. Says are hot.
Is that the brother?
Yeah, that's my other brother there. That's funny. Sorry, man, calling you out. And he also mentioned Dutch families are the best, but there's always cheese in the fridge. That was one thing too. Like it was so funny how my dad would always make a sandwich. There'd always be like these homemade loaves of bread, and just every time he'd make a sandwich, he'd just take like half the loaf and like two slices and this big slab of cheese. And he was like this giant of a man. So like, yeah, it was one of the funniest things when we had friends over and we just like watch him go to the kitchen and make a sandwich. Like, check this out, and then he just take like half the loaf and just like.
Oh well, when you're out. Like when you're out burning those kind of calories, like you got to eat. Yeah, we would get the turkey ham loaf, And to this day, I can't eat it at all. But we would get the turkey ham loaf, and it would be a really thick slice of ham and then cheese and bread. And
So
it's,
yeah, just even the butter too. It wasn't even like, like smoothly spread onto the bread or anything. It's just a big chunk of butter too, and just like slap on the cheese. It was the funniest thing. And that was pretty much the dinner too.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was so particular. It's like,
Yeah.
we
That
would
guy
get home really late, and it'd be like some simple dinner, like just have a bowl of cereal, and like I'd spiral, like I can't eat cereal for dinner.
so funny. Yeah. So I mean, like there's things that guy did that just like had like us and like rolling on the floor laughing, just because he's kind of a quirky guy too. I mean, the way he tried to go about things, like he was inspired by Amish people, and he wanted to try and create sort of that similar lifestyle for us. So he thought, okay, I can make a good living just with logging with horses. It's not very common in BC at the time. I think this is like in the late 80s, early 90s. Not as common, but I guess there were some that would have some small operations, definitely all over the place in Ontario. So he tried to take some of those skills and bring it over to the West. And so, yeah, we had like rusted dump brakes and everything. So when we were haying the fields, we had just like old horse drawing equipment, and he'd get the kids to kind of hop on the back and then pull the lever when it's filled up with too much hay. And so little experiences like that were really fun. And it was such a sight to see because he's using these team of horses. People on the highway would always stop and always have to check out what we're doing. He'd see like kids throwing hay on the back of a wagon, just the old fashioned way, like no tractors in sight. And so for people there, they were just really like curious, but like, why is this guy living this way? It's like all the other farmers, they have like hundreds of acres, they got tractors, they got everything you need, right? And he's just got a team of horses, and he's got this old wagon that's just barely holding itself together, but we're pulling all these things around. Man, it was fun just looking back on that.
What generation is your dad? Because it sounds like he has maybe some influence from like the Great Depression, like the Great Depression era.
54, I think.
Yeah, like that just sounds, when you think about the Great Depression and how everyone from that era just kind of keeps everything because they're like, what if we don't have that, going forward? It's like this need to like hold on to everything. But like I was saying earlier, he's holding on to a culture of where there's no like new technology. Like you're still like kind of keeping almost in honor with that. I don't know how he feels about technology, but
yeah, he's still to this day trying to adapt. So when you talk to him on the phone, it's always the funniest thing when some kind of random like thing will pop up in the chat, and then I'm still trying to picture this guy with these giant thumbs trying to use a phone. It's just I don't think you're ever going to fully adapt to it. So it's always funny hearing the same excuses. It's like, it's his phone. I tell you, no, Dad, trust me, you got giant thumbs.
Oh my gosh, no Blackberries for him.
Yeah.
The chat's talking about how
I remember when he had like ones that flip out and pull the little tent out. It was funny watching those.
Oh yeah, that was one of my first phones. That phone lasted quite a bit of time. Even though I may have lost it a couple times and dropped it a lot, but whatever. Bear Pelagic said his dad would make turkey sandwiches on mom's homemade whole wheat bread, and he thought that the kids that got the nice soft Wonder Bread were lucky. Well, and now the more you know. Look at us all making our own sourdough bowls and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, Wonder Bread. Yeah, I guess when we'd get the Wonder Bread, it'd usually come from the Salvation Army when they kind of donate some extra food out to other families that needed just some extra food. Because family of 6 kids, we were just like going through bread and stuff all the time and things like that. So every now and then we had a really awesome community that could chip in with things like that. And yeah, I remember aside from the homemade loaves of bread, it would always be the Wonder Bread. And they were just starting to kind of go stale too. So that's kind of my memory of Wonder Bread. It was always in its aged state.
Yeah, well, that was one of the first things that I had learned how to do. Like I was, I really, one of the first devices that I really wanted, and I think I got it in 2005, was a bread machine. And I loved that thing. It just died like, I think 2 years ago. I had it forever and I used it quite a bit. Like I used that thing. So it didn't sit in my, pantry and never get used. Like I used that thing a lot. I made bread dough with it. Like I would make bread dough when I was, when my son was young. I would make bread dough like every 2 days, and he has a nostalgic, like if I make it again, he has this nostalgic, can remember the scent, and he's like, that smells really familiar and I like it. And he'll even say that, like, this is familiar to me. It's like he sat with me and we made bread, like, and I'd take a little chunk of dough and give it to him so he can kind of mess around with it, and then I'd make all these little bread rolls, for sandwiches and whatever. And it's really good. Like the recipe that I had was great. And it's kind of nice to see all these bears doing all their sourdough starters, and really getting into that. I love baguettes. I'd love to like be able to make them, but they're kind of special.
Yeah, just see if there's any other questions here.
Yeah, anybody pop in questions if you have any. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up was you had posted a Derek Prince, I don't even know if it was just like this short sermon, and I don't even know what was going on with me. I think I was sick or something like that, and I I was watching it and it kind of burst me into tears. So what is your experience with that? Did you get to listen to that quite often, or
so it's interesting. Time when I may have heard of Derek Prince, like way back, like when I was a lot younger, I definitely was a lot more, I don't know, I might have been come across him once before. But yeah, as far as Derek Prince, when I was coming back to my Christianity, he was a name that kind of popped up. I really don't even remember how I rediscovered him, but his voice kind of gave me, might sound a little silly, it had like a bit of a Tolkien sound. I think it's just the British accent and everything. And other people were doing videos with him too. Like he has a very precise way of speaking and interpreting the Bible. And so I think when he does speak, it does sound like you're kind of feeling almost a more authoritative voice on it. You know that this person knows what he's talking about and he can bring it across to you, especially some pretty complex ideas about the spiritual realm and things like that, how to operate within the realm of the invisible, I think he said before. And so I guess when I was making that video, I pulled up one where I think he was talking about the power of testimony. I think that was the overall theme of the sermon. In the very beginning, he started mentioning the difference between logos and rhema. I think that was the first time I even heard of rhema before. It's a very interesting word. And he said, yeah, that means spoken word. And I think he was trying to get to the idea that if you want to have testimony, you also have to kind of speak it publicly. It's kind of a confirmation not only to yourself and to Christ, but it's also confession to other people that this is where you now stand in the spiritual battle of things. And he had a really good way of explaining it. And I guess he's actually a little critical of Lord of the Rings, Derek Prince. He thinks there's a lot of occult kind of mixed into it. So he says, just be mindful of that and possibly even give it some distance if, you're getting yourself too wrapped up and trying to mix in the ideas of witchcraft and things like that. He said Lord of the Rings definitely has a lot of that. So he said you want to be careful if you don't know how to navigate the realm of the occult yet. So he had pretty interesting words to say about that. But either way, I still pictured the footage to what his words were with Aragorn, kind of with the sword. He's coming up against the legion of Uruk-hai. So, I mean, I thought, yeah, when he's talking about Logos and Rhema and having your testimony, he's talking about deliverance. He's trying to teach you how to use the word of God to cast out demons, because he says you have the authority, and it's like a powerful sword too. So, I mean, I think, okay, yeah, once we kind of become more well-versed with scripture, we know how to battle these darker spirits, these entities, things that kind of come across us. And they're really good at influencing you. So I think, yeah, he's just saying that
Influence is a big theme this year.
Yeah.
Dreams, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was kind of checking in on some of the chat with the Bible group there with the Bears, and a lot of people are battling in different spiritual battles, all in different various forms of intensity. Some of them last for days, some of them are just kind of overnight. And it's great that this community can kind of jump together and start praying for each other, because I think that's a big game changer for us.
Yeah, and you're talking about Ramos' testimony, the Bear letters that come through, like those are testimonies of people's lives, a lot of them, and that's why they're so powerful and impactful. And it not only gives a certain good energy to the streams, it's also healing for the person who's giving the testimony, and then for the hearers of that testimony. And it's like we all need to hear our testimonies, like on multiple facets of wherever we're at, because it's healing to both the speaker and the hearer. And there's been some really moving letters, and I don't know if you can relate to that, or maybe all the Bears relate to that, but there's been some really moving letters that are incredible, where they changed my life, like the way that I was moving altogether. Made me really rethink, especially back early on. I think 2019 was a pretty intense year for me as far as changing, because of these letters that were coming in, and the way that I was relating to some of the women, and them kind of changing their life and seeing that it was possible, and then thinking, oh, if it was possible for that person, I'm relating to that person, I can change my life to kind of go in this different direction. And I can only imagine that there's so many other letters that just speak to people, and it's confession is a part of being a Christian, and I think that's part of that testimony is, I was in this weak spot, and here's how I got out of it, and really giving. I think another important thing is like giving glory to God for being able to put that in our lives too, because a lot of us have those veils, and we don't see something until like somebody kind of speaks, and they have to speak it boldly and authoritatively in order to have it penetrate your spirit as well.
I think even BB mentioned something like that too, just by writing a letter, and I still have to do one to this day. I always kind of get writing one and I kind of stop halfway through, because my mind just goes to all different kind of places. So my letter, I got to kind of learn how to wrap it up in something smaller. But I'd see other people with their letters, and they were just powerful testimonies. It feels like, okay, now that I've managed to deal with this on my own, there's this bit of a spiritual battle that revolves around it. Getting to share it with the other people is a huge step.
Yeah, and you don't know if you're helping elevate somebody else as well when you speak the truth of whatever the truth is, and whatever you've overcome. You don't know who that's reaching, and sometimes that's revealed to you, and sometimes it's never revealed to you, and it may be revealed to you years later, where there was a letter from a bear that really touched me and made me just about face everything. I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to tear all this down and start over. And she didn't know what kind of an impact her letter made on me. And I found it, I clipped it, and then I put it on my Insta, and I tagged her on it. I was like, this letter changed my life. And that person, that bear, she reached out to me, and she was like, I saw that you acknowledged me. I don't even know what to say. Like, I'm a little overwhelmed, like, just thinking that made such a difference in your life. And there's so many, I think, letters that can attest to that. Just testimony That ramos is so important. And there's so many like Greek words that are, not just logos, but ramos and the agape love. Like all these words are really important to kind of look at and expound upon, because it will give you more of an understanding into what you're reading as far as when you're reading the Bible.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, having to write it out, it's I feel like there's definitely moments in our life where we're especially when we're trying to come back to the Father and everything. There's moments where I feel like he does overtake our spirit and he shows how real he is. That's why, when people say things like, well, the Bible was written by men, when someone else will respond to that and say, well, they were inspired by God. I truly believe that. There's people, when they're really getting close to trying to understand it, something happens. It's very personal to their life. It's almost like God overtakes them, even speaks for them in ways. There's even one incident I had where I feel like God overtook me and he made me speak just a few words that I thought to myself, even to this day, like, why did I choose those words? Because ever since I spoke them, life changed for me on a spiritual level and on a physical level. So now I realize just how much more value I had. And just kind of seeing, just even for that brief moment, it's almost like time stops when he kind of puts a voice into you. You realize, you're going down this one path. It's full deception. And the Lord doesn't even have to say much to you. He just kind of gets into you and says, deception. And then now you realize, oh my goodness, this is a whole game that you guys play. I mean, sorry, not like a game as in for amusement, but it's like you got spirits that they're powerful influences. That's what they love to do. They love to whisper things into you. They cannot physically touch you. So I started thinking like, there's probably people that have like, what they call a ghost attack, right? And so they think, well, I have the scratches on me at night. So, I know something was going on in the room. Like, I think that was you, but with the demon spirits, they were whispering to you and putting yourself under attack. And once you know their game, it doesn't matter like if it's a big one, a small one, or whatever you kind of see there in the room, they have nothing over you because you have the power of Jesus Christ in you now. You're like, oh, okay, that's what the sacrifice was for. He actually really loves me. You guys don't. And that love is gone. So suddenly you just feel this whole other strength overtake you.
And it's such a powerful feeling. You're talking about how people will, I've heard so many times people say, like, I read the Bible front to back and, it didn't do anything for me. And it's like, well, I've read the Bible like a lot and I've sought truth in it. And it's like, I see all these truths just like, you read something that's like ping. It's almost like constant epiphanies. And it's just like, oh my gosh, that's pretty intense. Like I was reading about fear of the Lord and just having that, like really looking into that. And I came across a passage in 2 Kings, I think chapter 7, 15, if I'm remembering it right. But it was talking about how the men wouldn't really have reverence for God, but they thought they could do it outwardly, like show reverence with their works basically, and not really have that like internal reverence of fear of the Lord, which is, in the King James version, I think that appears tons of times in the Old Testament. And it's a beautiful thing if you understand what that fear of the Lord is. But to just kind of do these outwardly things and not really truly like be in it, like I think you've got these two different ways that you can take that. And so if you're reading it and you're hearing that truth and it's really speaking to you, then you can see like, oh, this is a living word. Like it's resonating so much in my soul that it's very intense. I'm missing.
I think that's actually something even Derek Prince said. Now, I don't know if this is actually a common saying amongst Christian groups and things, but I remember Derek Prince was saying that when you read the Bible, you're not reading it, it's reading you. And that spoke so true to me, because even becoming like a newer person, like read the Bible in elementary school, but when I was in Christian school, but I ended up forgetting a lot of the scripture as I started getting older. It just started moving away from me. But then when I started kind of going back in and revisiting certain scripture, it would hit you. It hit you so hard that you're thinking, okay, like I think I understand what this is saying now, just and how it personally applies to you, your life, the decisions you made. And some of them are very hard realities. You know, you got to really, really examine yourself. And I think it was this one thing I had when I was thinking about fear of the Lord. I think a big fear is to be without him. So I think I had this dream one time where everything just felt black. And then I thought I was calling out to the Lord in the middle of my dream. And that's when it really hit me. I thought that would be the most frightening thing ever, is that after, this world ends, passing away in the body and everything, what if you don't have God in your heart anymore? You're just calling out to the darkness all the time, and he's not going to respond back. It's like you're cut off from heaven, essentially. You don't have that spiritual connection to him anymore. You're just float around in darkness. No one's answering back. It's one of those really odd dreams you get. And I started wondering, what if that's what a ghost is, basically? They're just cut off from heaven, cut off from God, and they just kind of wander around the material realm, angry, kind of stuck in here. And so that's where people kind of come across like frustrated, angry spirits. They might have a connection to that place or something. It's really strange. But then, yeah, I kind of thought that might be something to that, just being in that eternal blackness. You're cut off. You can't speak. You can't pray anymore. That's a true fear. And I thought, it's a really good time where you have like this time right now to really understand the word, get kind of more,
Yeah, and the most grateful thing is that God is so patient and long suffering for us. And, maybe some of us more than others. And when you're talking about how people are like, how the Bible was written by man, it's like, yeah, but it was inspired by Holy Spirit. Like, it was an inspiration, like they were inspired. And if you don't understand that inspiration of God, and you can't see that when you're in the word, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of doubt. And that's what it is. It's doubt that this is the word of God. And like our testimony is just, that's still a very powerful part of it. And so it's all these little pieces that kind of shine into the whole glory of it. And so I don't know, it's I was listening to your last stream with Finks, and you guys were kind of talking about like which versions and all this stuff. And for a long time I read the King James version from like age 18 until now. And so that's where all my memory verses are, they're coming from. So it's like, you can call him fancy pantaloon wearing fool or whatever. But, as far as like my memory verses go, like I've memorized it in this translation. And, for other people, they can read these other translations, but it's hard for me to like remember. It's almost like bear names. So people will try and use their regular names around me when I'm going and visiting them. And I'm like, you can't just say Mark. Like, give me a bear name. Like, otherwise I don't know who you're talking about. You can't just say, Mike. Like, give me a frame of reference so that I can, because that's how I can remember it. And that's just how my brain operates. And when I'm reading these other translations, it almost messes with my memory, if that makes any sense. I don't know, maybe just weird.
When you give someone a nickname too, my stepdad does this now with his own daughters. It, to this day, it gives me a bit of a chuckle just because it sounds really cruel. They're used to it. So he calls one of his daughters Pig just because she made like pig sounds when she was first born. So he's like, oh, your name's Pig. And then there was also Slimer because she drooled a lot when she was really little. So yeah, he's like, so that's Slimer, Pig. And then there's Boone because his boy called the moon Boone. And so then he calls him that to this day. And so when I'll be like, I'll mention her by her actual name, like, oh yeah, did you know Jenna said this? He's like, who? Pig. He's like, right.
Yeah. Definitely. that's what I address all my letters as. If I have bear names, I put bear names on their letters. And when I'm out and about, it's like I'm just Copper. Like, that's just it. Like, nobody can screw that name up. Not like my regular name. Laxa Bear asked, what Bible version do you prefer?
I don't really have an actual preference. So for not last Christmas, but the Christmas before, I was given a King James 1611 version. So I mean, there's some. It's mostly just the regular King James version, but there's some differences, and I guess how the words are put together and everything. I still haven't fully got to the actual differences that it makes, but I think it was interesting. I think Camera Bear had a good quote from Timothy, and I forget the exact number the scripture was, but it's talking about like how we, I probably have to pull up the scripture on this one again because I know I'm kind of forgetting it, but it was talking about how we do not oppose our enemies. We actually try and pray for them and try and be good for them in the Holy Spirit. But then my brother says, well, remember, they're not our enemies. They oppose themselves because of the spirits that influence them. Something along those lines. And I really wish I knew the scripture off by heart now, but I'm kind of butchering this. But it was a really, really interesting thing that he pointed out. Like, there's some little differences that the King James Version does. I'll see a lot of people will refer to Romans 13 about how they say you have to obey the government. The King James Version will say, well, you're subject to the government. And that always made a big difference to me. I thought, you're subject to what they do, but it doesn't mean you kneel to them because you only kneel to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. I'm like, okay, so there's little things like that. But ultimately, I feel like as long as you're, really praying and trying to understand the verses, it doesn't matter too much unless you get to things like the modern Bibles. And
yeah, there's some other, there's other versions that I can read, but when it comes to being able to remember like where it came from, it's just the way my brain is wired. Like, I've spent 20 years of my life like reading this one version, and it's really difficult for me to mix it up. Can't teach an old bear new tricks. I think it was in First Timothy, Real Cosmology.
yeah, it's from Timothy, but yeah, that's a really good verse. That's I think that one for a lot of us, like, that really woke us up to kind of what we're dealing with, especially at this turning point in our lives. I think a lot of us really wanted to come back to our Christian, our upbringings and everything, but we wanted to kind of disconnect from the churchian side of things because that's what I think a lot of us were familiar with at a young age. But then as we want to re-examine Scripture, and then now things like Ephesians 6:12, they really stick out with us.
Freight Train Bear, yes, I have made cheesecake, and I've made several of them. I love cooking and baking and stuff like that. Yeah, the version, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here on my high horse and say KJV onlyist or Rick James onlyist, as I like to joke, but I think everyone needs to kind of pick which one really speaks to them, that's going to be the most profitable as far as their spiritual life. So
Exactly.
And it's not for me to sit here and say you need to do it this way or that way. It's, if you come to me with a question, I'm going to give you advice. But it really does come down to you're responsible for your to work out your own salvation. And we're just here to kind of comfort each other as we go through our trials. And one of the big verses that has been just really heavy in my life is like, as we're all going through the trials, that we do it with joy. We count it as joy to do it. And I think that's so powerful. It's in the first chapter of James, where he's saying, count it as joy to be able to go through trials and tribulations, and do it gladly, do it with joy. And, going back to us as bears and kind of where we're going on our path, I think because of the level of immorality in the world and where it is and how we're not growing from that, we're really trying to clasp on to morality. And for many of us, that comes in the form of Christianity. We're a Christian nation. That's that's just kind of where we're at. It's majority Christian. But we do want this return of morality in our life. We want things to be orderly and righted and have that justice and the proper authority of, heaven above our nation, and then, have our nation have that same, morality. And it really starts at us. And I think that's one of the great things about being a part of this community is we have to take control of it. And, I think I've said this before, but when Owen was like, I'm building a fence because Trump's not building the wall, and if he can't keep out whatever it is, then I'm going to do it. And that was a huge jumping off point of, okay, now that the fence is done, what else am I going to do? Well, they're taking away my money. Now I'm going to plant a garden, and I can't not feed my family. And that's going to be my next hedge against
that. Now has become a very hugely part of this community. It all started like we'll see like that. We saw like at first it happened to Owen in the streams. We'd even watch it happen in real time in some cases. And yeah, you're right. It started with like the fence, and then now with the food, and now everything's now gone to like Dandy at this point. So now he's like making sure every day he's got milk, he's got eggs, he's got everything he needs. He's got a good community where you can talk to people down the street if he needs meat and things like that. So it's amazing what you can just do in a few years. And I know he's so excited about this too, because he knows it's possible for any one of us to have this kind of level of community. And I remember I was talking with my one friend. We were getting a pretty good conversation, and he's definitely more into the whole fear porn side of things, where he's like, well, did you know Klaus Schwab is doing this and he's controlling this? And, now they got the HIV thing's going to be spreading. So you almost kind of have to remind him, well, let's just think about solutions here, right? You got 160 acres of land. You're just a basic carpenter. You know how to build like little cabins, little huts and things like that. He's already done that. So I remember like telling him, like, so what do we do for like local supply chains? And he said, oh man, the people in the town already are doing sort of things like that. They're offering like perishables for like hay and stuff like that for your animals, and they'll trade meat for labor. And I thought, this is huge. Like that's an amazing stepping point now. If we're ever going to become to a point where we have to fully rely on that, the system's already there. So I mean, that's what Owen's talking about community and stuff is such a big thing for all of us. And we can even just make it happen. Like we're not all in the same town, but making internet real life, so this one person there I know who's got good, he knows how to pour driveways or things like that. He's got a little like bobcat. He can come over and he can kind of help you out with that sort of thing. We now have that connection.
Yeah, like, these are really key things. Like, we're talking about testimony and then community and creativity. Like, creativity is another one of those big things as well. It's like, you can't make everything and really just rely on yourself. And one of the great things about Christianity is like, it's not you by yourself. Like one sheep can't be a flock. We're all like this big flock, and we're kind of working together to take care of one another while we're being shepherded, right? And so creativity is one of the other things that I think is really important as far as being a teaching tool, creating something beautiful that brings joy to people. I think that there's a good exchange of energy in that. And I only know that like from, a personal experience. I was really, really bitter. I was being overworked. I was, it was very masculine, logical, problem solving, executing like ideas and getting things taken care of. But there was no creating anything. It was just managing stuff. And so my friend was like kind of bothering me, and she's like, you should start this like hobby thing. And I was like, okay, well, whatever, I'll try it. And so I started doing it, and my attitude changed from at my, my logical problem solving job, as I was doing this creative thing at home. And it really like shifted how I viewed people and how I related to people. And it was a very interesting observation, as you're looking at, oh wow, you're starting to get like compliments from people that are complimenting your boss, like, oh, you're doing great, whatever she's doing, like keep her doing that. She's a little bit more, you're better able to talk to her or whatever. So creativity is like another one of those things, and then community is such a even bigger part of that as well. So that's really cool to see everyone kind of get together and do all these things.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I'd like to do this year too, is try and branch a little bit. I mean, not too far away from what I do is like cartoons and stuff like that, but I'd like to be able to utilize my strength that I have from early days of doing labor and stuff. So I mean, I have that built into me. If there's any way I can help with things like that, I'm all for it for sure. So when I was talking with my one friend who has all the property, he was telling me like, oh, if things get really hard, just take a couple of acres and build yourself a cabin. He's like, I don't give a crap, I'm like, this is great. And I told him, like, since I probably won't be able to afford a farm myself, if there's ever one nearby me, I would help with labor, no problem. Like, I'd love to be able to help out in any sort of way I can.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing. I know Paraplegic wanted to hear about that, and maybe even High King and Waxa, but I think I'm probably going to go join and help this bear's farm, help her kind of get some things settled away in the garden. Like, it's going to be planting season, and she's planning a bear meetup, and so she just needs extra hands. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I'm just just working 30 hours a week, and I have an RV. Like, may as well live your life and go do cool things and while you can, and have different experiences, meet people, and so that's the opportunities are there. And I think that if we all kind of look at it, not where you have to be tied down where you're at, but like look at it in a more creative way. Okay, is doing this temporarily going to be beneficial for me as far as learning even more or refining whatever skills I have?
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah. Well, we've been going for an hour 40. Is there anything else that you want to hit on? Like,
I guess to just circle back to some of the cartoon ideas, is there any other ideas that anyone could just kind of throw in that just kind of comes to mind? Because I guess we had some ideas about the trucker thing and also the Ira Christmas Carol. Yeah, does anyone throw in? I'm all for
I don't know. I do so many. Like, I would love to be able to. Yeah. Yep. Circle back. Let's get some ideas. Oh, are you going to submit a dragon pick for Owen?
Give it a shot. Not really good at drawing dragons. It would definitely look really weird and cartoony. It won't look like epic, but yeah, we'll see.
Let me think. There's been some, I don't know. I was laughing at the Amazing Polly thing. That was just cracking me up. Zezzy has an idea.
What you got there, Zezzy?
Let's throw some. She winked. I don't know what that means. Just stick dragon. I think that's eligible, MJ.
What was it? I get told that a number of times, like when people find out I'm an animator, they'll say like, "Oh, I can't draw a stick man." And I thought, well, I mean, animating it doesn't really matter like how well you can draw or anything. It's if you can draw a stick man, just gotta draw a whole lot of them, and you can make some animation. You make it pretty appealing too. So I don't know if anyone remembers they're pretty morbid from back in the day, but the stick death theaters or whatever, people just like animate stick men, just come out with various ways to like take themselves out. And really, really gruesome and everything, but they're kind of funny back in the day. So wouldn't recommend kids watching now, though.
Yeah, I probably won't watch them, but I think I know what you're talking about.
It was like kind of when the internet was new. You kind of get like that one chance during like your lunch break, or like someone like from school has the internet at their house, and so you go over and be like, okay, now you can check out some of these stick down theater things or whatever.
Animate Polly as a parrot. Oh my
And
gosh. I love parrots. I don't want them to be ruined. Volcano Dragon. Hilarious.
oh yeah, there was it the salad fingers guy? Oh gosh, yeah, Freight Train Bear just reminded me of that. I almost had him completely out of my mind.
Yeah, I'll think about it because I go back and I watch old, just like random old streams at work when I'm finally caught up on the current ones, and so I'll go back and I'll okay, this one looks interesting. I'm gonna listen to that, and that's where I get like a lot of the clips that I've been taking and posting on my Insta. Is just from going back and listening, like, okay, here's where we were at. I do like the idea of silly hats. Yeah, well, I think if anybody can think of anything that's rewatching this, definitely send you a message of what they would probably suggest. Things that
Christmas Carol, because I think that there's so many ideas that can go into that one. If they can at least just kind of come up with a list of all the things that we've like joked about as bears throughout the past couple of years, I feel like they have a spot that could make it in there.
New plant meat. Oh boy, impossible meat. I think it's so fun. Like, if you're vegan, like whatever, but I think it's so funny that they're recreating all this meat. I was watching this TikTok of a guy watching somebody make Instant Pot vegan ham, and it looked like ham at the end, but it was just like the way that it was made, and I'm just thinking to myself, if you're vegan, why would you want to pretend to eat meat? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But Copper, what stream number? Do you mean like what stream number for Owen streams? If you're talking about that, they weren't numbered yet, but it was around 70 is when I started like really listening. And I think I went back and watched quite a few of the Why Didn't They Laughs, because it was really like still in the Why Didn't They Laugh time. So it was pre moon landing. It was really like Jordan Peterson days, Crowder days.
See, a real cosmology bear says he could offer some voices. That's awesome. Yeah, things like that. That's always good. Just because sometimes you can just come up with those things like on the fly during a recording session. It's kind of, you have like one idea for like maybe a bit of script in your mind. You get something to do the lines, but then something completely random comes out. Those are always the funnest to animate too.
When did you start listening to Owen streams? Do you know a number?
I can't remember exactly when. I remember like seeing a little bit, like with a lot of people, with like Steven Crowder, he would be there just as one of the guests and everything. And some of his sketches that he did with him with Eminem.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. I still
bad.
That was hilarious.
Time, and then right around when that ended, I started working from home. And man, I remember those days. Like I was pretty big into listening to Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and all that garbage. And the funny thing is, I wasn't really into Ben Shapiro. I just wanted to kind of get myself touched up with some of these politics and things that were going on at the time, because I was not interested too much in it at the time. But I guess just the way everything was changing, I tried to get myself up to speed. It happened to be through him and Crowder and Peterson. So that's actually where I started branching away from certain other areas and just kind of, yeah. And yeah, Owen showed up, and my sister, who was also working on Rick and Morty at the time, said, hey, you should check out this guy. He's, talking about, he's got his group of bears. Reminds me of your bear character from your hometown cartoon. And yeah, you should just check him out. And that's sort of how it began.
the rest is history. Yeah, the chat's going crazy about non-meat and meat. Yeah.
I don't even think of it right, so I can't say anything about it.
It was bizarre. It's just a bizarre concept to me, and you know, I don't know. It's weird, but you know, it's like kind of like Owen says, like maybe they deserve their soy and their bugs to eat it, like in the cities. Like, you know, who are we to say that they shouldn't?
Yeah, if we can get something like the people eating soy meats in the cartoons and everything, like there's some soy boys that got like some little like soy meat deli or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of other characters that Owen's really kind of.
Well, he's definitely a boomer thing, and was it definitely some other ones for sure.
Yeah, everyone's getting pretty intense in the chat right now. Well, so I guess you're on Unbearables Media. Do you have any? Do you have a YouTube that you want to plug?
I have not been putting much up there just because.
Are you gonna get some merch finally?
Yeah, I'll definitely work on.
Some bears like to purchase merch and like have things, you know.
That for sure. I'll get like some actual personalized cartoons and stuff like that and put them on mugs and things like that. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I worked with Red Pill to get I can't even remember now. I think it was a mug because I wanted to have a mug of the Zoomer Duck. My son loves Zoomer Duck, thinks he's coolest. And then, you know, Mountain Bear came out with his Ira. So I have this, and I did get the socks too. But, you know, I really encourage our animators that if they're creating stuff, like put it on merch and, you know, let people know that it's available. And, you know, if that helps fund you to make more cartoons, like gives you kind of a little bit of a leeway to back off of, you know, whatever else you're doing, like by all means, like go for it.
It'd be definitely new to me. Putting up like an actual storefront and coming up with little like memorabilia and stuff like that. But seeing as now hand drawn bears done, like all the artist bears have pretty much done it now. So I mean, yeah, I'd love to give this a shot.
Looks like Wobbly wants Ira undies.
I mean, those socks are pretty funny.
I've got the socks, like, yeah. And this mug's pretty, it's like a camp mug, basically. So I think it's pretty cool.
Rick and Morty mug, which, you know, I haven't even watched the show since I worked on. I need to replace some of these things and get some memorabilia for the Bears.
Yeah, Unbearables merch. Beartaria Times, the Beartaria Times mug is amazing. The 11-ounce one, it's huge, solid, and it's one of my favorites, but I dropped it, so I had to buy another one. But I still use it, even if it has a crack in it, because I love like how it's just so, it's like fits perfectly in my hand. And then what other? I got my Ira mug. I got my Zoomer Duck mug, and you know, I like to collect mugs and whatever. So
it's kind of a synchronicity with Red Pill Rooster's Boomer Duck, because the two characters I came up for Hometown with was a bear character, and his name was Tucker, and then he had a sidekick who was kind of like a scoundrel duck, and his name was Bill, and he looks kind of similar to Boomer Duck in ways. So yeah, it was synchronicity there. When I saw like that cartoon came out, I just thought, oh man, what are the odds? Yeah, just like a community of bears, and then one of the famous characters they come up with is a duck character. So I thought this is really funny.
Some synchronicities for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Bear says, thanks for all your excellent work.
Thanks, man.
We need to have some more merch. And any last things that you want to say before we sign off? I just want to say thank you for joining me, obviously. Yeah,
no problem. And I guess I can't really think of anything else to bring up right now. Touched on a few things there with the Derek Prince and cartoons and whatnot, some of the family story there, but yeah, I guess you can always do us another stream and
Yeah.
get into a little.
Well,
Yeah.
we didn't even get into the Canadian trucker thing, so that's pretty
That's
amazing.
probably a good thing for me. So
Yeah. Well, we kind of did, I guess. We brushed over it. Oh, Wax asks, are you married, kids, single?
single right now. So
There you go, ladies. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. This is part 340 and such a legend. Excited to work with you. Anybody that has any ideas and wants to throw that your way, just give them a DM, probably on Insta. It's the best way to get a hold of you. And any animation ideas or any help with the Christmas Irish Scrooge.
Is offering to do voices, things like that. Even Olive Tree asked to do music, which I think would be a great place to do something more orchestrated for sure. So yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for joining, sticking around. Thank you for joining Hometown. It's great to chat with you, and I look forward to hang out with you more.
Awesome. All right, thanks guys. Take care.
Bye guys.